history of our country is characterized by too much forgetting.
It was Winnie Mandela and not Mandela's wife.
An explosion in South Africa that would make the French Revolution look like a very early morning picnic.
Southern Africa is like a zebra. You cannot put a bullet in the white stripe and think the animal will not die. It will die.
It has become difficult to avoid taking lives.
Many people look at the making of the modern South Africa as a modern miracle. This was no miracle. This was about a unique breed of people being at the same place at the same time and finding each other at a human level.
Wie is ek? Strandloper in scheepswrak. 'n geknakte tak. Rokende lampe. Skynheilige gelowige.
Charismatic personalities do not feature prominently in National Party politics. Pick Botha's the exception. Easily the most popular of the president's men, the energetic foreign minister was given the task of kicking off the National Party's election campaign.
People often joked he was the Elvis Presley of South African politics because he would fill every school hall in this country just by virtue of his personality, and there was always something about him that attracted people.
Pick's popularity was contagious, but not without opposition, especially from the formidable conservative right wing.
Vriende, ons vergadering is nie opgebreek nie, ons hou aan.
Is sat en siek om aan die verkeerde kant te leef. Dis hoogtyd dat die Afrikaner die rol speel wat vir hom uitgeknip was. Sy rassevooroordeel agter die rug kry. Sy nuwe trek begin. En sy rol speel in die nuwe Suid-Afrika, waarin geen verdere kleurvooroordeel mag wees nie.
There were a whole generation of National Party politicians who just saw their side of the story, who said, we must survive and we will survive at all costs, irrespective of the price. They were military people. They say, no, we will destroy them. We will fight them. They will never take over. We'll just fight them. And Pick Botha said, you can fight. You can win every skirmish in the townships, but in the end you will lose the war. And if you lose the war, we lose the country.
I call it the tyranny of immediacy. The territory of the moment now. If you are there, then at that stage, you must hold a department together. You must be in touch with all your ambassadors abroad. You must explain police brutality against blacks. You must explain the evil of apartheid and why do you keep on. And if we take too long, you might reach the point of no return.
Mr. Mandela's release, is there any possibility that could happen anytime soon?
The moment he declares that he would not be involved in the planning of violence.
They saw us as the enemy. And we saw them as the enemy. We might have said, this one is more enlightened, and that one speaking from the Broederbond is a little more enlightened. But in the enemy camp, we saw them all committed to perpetuating the system. And our task was to isolate South Africa. And Pick and his, as foreign minister, and his band of diplomats had to fight against that, and a very difficult task, because, apartheid had been declared a crime against humanity. We never went to meet him and didn't leave at 2 a.m. And I must say, on most of the issues, he didn't stick to his positions he started with. And he was not dogmatic. And he understood that, look, I'm no longer in the driving seat.
Pik had travelled Africa. He felt that there was a far greater affinity between the white Afrikaner and the rest of Africa than most white Afrikaners themselves understood. And he used to make the point, we belong here. Yes, we are nationalists, but so are our African brothers and sisters. Why can't we have an African nationalism together? And in that sense, he was highly regarded by a lot of African leaders. They had a lot of affection for him.
In 1986, in February 86, at a press conference, it was the penultimate question whether, in my opinion, there would ever be a black president in this country. And then put some salt into it. He added, and would I be prepared to serve under such a black president? I unhesitatingly, immediately, categorically stated yes. I almost lost my job. There was a special cabinet meeting arranged the next day. Let me be frank with you. The women were sitting there with their dresses and hats and bouquets in the galleries. And I suppose for a moment I thought, this might just have been, how the guillotine operated in France, you see.
Mr. Botha is the first of any high-ranking politician in apartheid South Africa to say, I'm ready to serve under a black president.
At one stage, he was the longest-serving foreign minister in the world. What's like 17 years or so he served as a foreign minister. But there was a joke in the National Party caucus among his friends that he is also the foreign minister in the cabinet, in the sense that he's a strange guy, he's an oddball, he's the odd one out, which he was. And the other thing is why he was indeed a foreign minister is because he's seen the world. He was engaged with the world, and that made him foreign in many ways.
A colleague would smilingly say, of course he is the foreign minister, underlining the concept foreign. He is the minister for the foreigners, and so on, joking way and so on, but with a little nasty element within the joke.
And for Pik, a lot of politics was playing parts. And when it was, demanded from him to be the blustering sort of guy, we will never surrender, never ever, the communists will never rule this country, the red flag will never fly in Pretoria and stuff. That was his part. That was the stuff that he was supposed to do. But then on other occasions, and that's the interesting one for me, he always, and he's being described, I see, as a liberal. He's never been a liberal, but he was always on the side of change.
A fire has a very deep psychological impact, which psychologically can help you to bridge and get over points of difference. It is strange what that feeling of isolation of a little group of people together can do to you, to open your mind, to be more forgiving, to be more prepared, to see the other person's point of view, and therefore to be ready to come to an agreement.
Botha is quite right. I remember many times sitting around a fire with him, drinking wine and whiskey, many times, before serious boss parade, as we call them, bush discussions, So we had that opportunity of loosening the screws. We could never agree on a simple issue of an agenda because we did not trust each other. So you have to build trust.
Southern Africa is like a zebra. You cannot put a bullet in the white stripe and think the animal will not die. It will die. A new era has begun.
Mr. Mandela was the first speaker, and his introduction was to give us a survey of the Anglo-Boer War and the history of the Afrikaner. But what he could not understand is why, after the Afrikaner rescued himself and he emerged from his poverty and suffering, why didn't the Afrikaner then reach out to the black people And I must admit to you that that was a severe blow to us, because it is correct. We were all guilty. There were times that I also supported it. Don't think for a moment I'm trying to escape and say I'm not guilty. What I'm saying to you is inside your group, it took hard work and persuasion and persistence and determination to persuade your colleagues over many years. But we did it.
It was a lovely time for him. I think they seemed to get on really well with all the guys in the ANC, that initial period. They would joke. He always tell me that, there was a good spirit in the cabinet,
He was always different. I think he learned a lot from interacting with the international community, and he must have known. He knew that apartheid would fall. So to some extent, we do admire him for standing his ground at the time.
When you said, "Sir, I'm prepared to serve under a black president," I was sitting in Mozambique as a Yiriman normal, but it shows the man who was not prepared to be dominated by his own circumstances, was prepared to lead in the storm, to lead in good weather. And today we're where we are, Mr. Botha. Ek sê met trotsheid. En ek moet een van die digter quote. Ek hou van 'n man wat sy man kan staan en 'n slag kan slaan. If I say that today to you, looking back in history, ek bedoel dit. I mean it.
Buck was a survivor. Lasted a long time in his job, longer than I did in mine.
Buck for 20 years was pulling and pushing and dragging and arguing and getting himself nearly kicked out. But he stayed the course, he stayed with his party, and he brought them into an era which FW couldn't do on his own, PW couldn't do on his own. None of them had the courage and the determination, well, the vision.
There was from Buck a total commitment to this country and all its people. A good title to give to his whole career was, he was a trailblazer. Hy was a padvinder.
Pick taught me what it meant to be an African. He taught me that every single one of us who love the land, who feed from the land, who respect the land, are Africans. He taught me about strength in diversity. He taught me to be positive in the most dismal times, and he believed in this continent like nobody that I know.
All that is left to us is this little tiny book. I think you know it.
Yes, I didn't write it.
Yes.
I did not write this book. A woman by the name of Teresa Papenfuss wrote it. I was against the effort originally. She stole my poems. These poems I used to write on cigarette boxes next to a fire in the bushveld.
Mm-hmm.
And suddenly here they are in a book, Yes, well, it betrays my thoughts. But all right, at least when I wrote them, that's how I felt.
Yes.
So I can't deny it. So it was not always easy to be Minister of Foreign Affairs of South Africa. So wie is ek? Mens in sy herfs. Graf afwagtend. Gedagvaardigde verhoor afwagtend. Slagoffer van my eie denke. Prooi van my eie rooftog. Uitgelewerde aan die noodlot. It's very difficult to judge oneself. I remain a stranger for myself. The biggest challenge, I think, for us is to discover yourself.